This is 40K Today. We're like the Primaris Lieutenant of 40K podcasts. There's a new one every day.
Welcome to Friday, 40K Today fam. Today is Friday, September the 11th, and I'm your host, Paul Murphy. I'm here to usher you into the weekend and bring you the latest 40K news and views. In this episode, we speak with a longtime tournament organizer and bring up a question about 40K I think we've all asked ourselves one time or another. Our first segment up to the plate is Stephen Pardo from SN BattleReports. You may have heard this name before because he hosts a stellar tournament in Gibraltar and is known for their amazing hobby standard and high-class tournament feel. Let's check in and see what he's doing right now.
Let's go to Gibraltar. And Stephen Pardo, thanks for being on the show again with us. Nice to have you back.
Oh, no problem. It's a pleasure.
Let's talk about, we'll start with the little tournament that you ran. I think it was over the weekend. Relatively small, just a few players, but great success and nice to actually have people back in the studio and playing games, right?
Yeah, exactly that. So it was a small 16-man RTT, and it's been the first event since beginning of COVID. So I think our last event was February. So a good breather for everybody. You could see the people enjoying it a lot as well. So it was good to see. And
Red Corsairs won the event. Is that right? That can't be right. It wasn't Salamanders. Are you sure?
It's shocking. Yeah. So yeah, the final game was actually Iron Hands versus Red Corsairs. But the Red Corsairs won it in the end. Yeah, it's a pretty decent list. Got a lot of people by surprise. You know, the Red Corsairs, not a lot of people are familiar with it, but the whole advance and charging in most of its units, and it was a really demon engine list and fast moving as well, which is good for 9th edition at the moment.
Yeah, those are keys, right? Being able to have the fast moving, being able to be durable and hard to knock off, and being able to advance and charge is massive, as White Scars can attest to, and some Space Wolf units, and so yeah, sounds like a good list.
It does, yeah.
Let's talk about the next big thing which is coming up for you guys, which is famous all over the world. The amazing figure of Lawrence Baker has won this event 3 times over the years. We're talking about No Retreat. Can you tell us a bit of the background of the event and how it came to be?
Yeah, of course. So there was a lot of people that wanted to play on our battlefields and on our tables that we used in our battle reports. So we wanted to do an event, but we wanted to do it very differently. We wanted something exclusive, and we wanted to be different to any other event around the world. And as we've already probably spoken about, Gibraltar is a very good place to do something like that. It's a really nice place. The rock is very nice to see as well. So yeah, we wanted to do something different, and we basically went for an invite-only event. So people apply from all around the world. Our last event had 265 applications.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's crazy. And there's only 42 people, players that make the final list.
Right, okay. And it's not just quality of player you're looking at, right? You're looking at a quality of person, but also the army painting. Everything has to be just spot on to be able to make that event.
Yeah, so we asked for a specific army background, the same as the player background. So where you're from, how long you've been playing, what armies you play, and obviously you can apply with a couple of your personal armies. So we ask for high quality images of the army, and yeah, so it's quite a cool way to actually get to know the players before they actually arrive.
And you've got some celebrity people who like to come. Lawrence Baker, we've already mentioned, but Winters and Liam from Deployment Zone, they love to come along to your events as well. I've seen some videos of them having good times.
Yeah, there's actually been a lot of YouTubers. We've got the Geeks 40K as well, which have come before. We've got the 30K channel as well, when we used to do the Horus Heresy events in the No Retreat version of it. So yeah, I've made a lot of friends throughout the event as well.
So No Retreat 9, I imagine you've already got the armies in. Everyone's kind of looking forward to the event, which is only as we go to where it's only, maybe 3 weeks away. What armies are we looking forward to seeing on the tabletop? Who are you picking to do well this year?
So this is something different we do for No Retreat. We also like to have a good range of armies. So when we're actually picking the final 42, it's not only about the armies that you've applied with. It's also we try and get every single army in the range of Games Workshop to be at least one army of. But this time with COVID, there's been a lot of last-minute dropouts just because they haven't been able to get flights to specific places.
Yeah.
It's all a bit of a mess. So the event now is a 30-player event instead of 42. So there's been a last-minute 12-player dropouts. But there's a lot of armies, and again, I think there's from the 30 guys, I think there's still about 20 armies being represented. So it's pretty cool still.
Yeah, great. All right, well, we're looking forward to the coverage of it. As always, I point to people to SN Battle Reports just to see great video battle reports and the old school photo and long-form written out battle reports. But we're looking forward to the coverage of No Retreat. It's always a lot of fun. Thanks for talking to us, mate.
I always like to keep my eye on that one, especially the results and the cool little things he does to make everyone feel like they're really participating in something special. Thanks a lot.
Today's episode of 40K Today is brought to you by Frontline Gaming. Frontline Gaming is a one-stop shop for all your Warhammer hobby needs, discounted products, American-made gaming mats and terrain, and a full line of miniatures painting service and daily hobby content. And this can all be found at frontlinegaming.org.
Next up, we've got a coaching tip from John Lennon. We ask if it's worth to chase the new hotness or to stick with what you know.
All right, as always, we have our weekly coaching tip with the one and only John Lennon. John, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking.
So what Art of War coaching tip do you have for our listeners this week?
Absolutely. So I'm going to talk today about kind of the pros and cons of switching to the new hotness versus staying at what you're comfortable with. As I'm sure you know, we will be getting a new Space Marine Codex next month. And if you haven't already hit that Space Marine bandwagon, it's going to be tempting. But I do want to talk to the listeners about how it's not always the best choice to just switch to an army right off the bat and expect to have that same amount of success. So something that I always talk about is, familiarity with the army and knowing what to do when you're making decisions is a very underrated, and it normally takes a lot of practice to get to that point. So if, for example, you're trying to play in a tournament in the month of October and you just want to pick up a Space Marine army that you've never played before and try to win, you're probably not going to have as much success as you like. I know a lot of people switched right to Space Marines before LVO last year and still went like 3-3, 4-2, which is probably the record that they might have gotten with their past army as well. How comfortable you are making decisions, how comfortable you are knowing your rules, and kind of knowing what your units are going to do makes a very big difference.
All right,
go ahead.
I was going to say, let's break that down a little bit. So how many reps would you say on average does it take to get to be proficient with an army? And what I mean by proficient is make mostly good decisions, understand how the army works. Maybe, it probably takes 100 games to really get an in-depth knowledge of an army, right? But there is a proficiency level where you can feel kind of comfortable before that. What do you think? Where do you think that threshold is?
So it's always going to depend from person to person. My personal rule is 10 games, where if I'm switching armies, and now if I'm taking a Tyranid list that I've played 10 times and I'm changing one unit, it's not going to take me 10 games to be comfortable. But let's say I went from Genestealer Cult to Space Marines, I would want to get at least 10 competitive games against players who I might play at a tournament to feel comfortable. Now, obviously, I'm not going to get any practice against, my 9-year-old cousin with Start Collecting Death Guard. But, if you actually talk to your friends, talk to clubmates, people at the local store, get games in against competitive armies. And ideally, you're losing a couple of these games because you're going to learn more when you lose. I think that 10 games is kind of my benchmark, where you want to get the army in a good situation so that you know how to execute it when you're in the right spot. You want to be in a bad spot so that you understand what the army does to get out of it. I consider myself very proficient with White Scars, but the first time I was in a bad spot with White Scars, I played the game wrong and I lost. And I have played it better since then. You want to hit a couple different benchmarks, and if you can do that in 3 games, maybe you're good at learning an army. But I would say 10 games is my recommended minimum.
Okay, so a good way to look at that too is if you're like a standard casual player, right? You play once a week at weekly game night, and you go to an RTT on the weekend. All right, so if you go to one RTT a month and play a weekly game night to get your 10 games of competitive play, it's like 2 months.
Yeah,
right.
That's
So Yeah, and I mean that's a good way for people to think about it.
Mhm.
So, and I think where the math really comes in is if you're going to switch armies, you know you're going to get a lot of practice and a lot of games in. So, say you've got like a dedicated gaming group, and you play, you travel to a GT every weekend, then it's probably more realistic to switch armies because you'll go through that learning curve faster and probably won't feel that frustration as much as you would if you spread that out over 2 months' time, right? Where you might be better off just playing something that you have true muscle memory with. Does that make sense?
Yes, I agree. So yeah, like especially like kind of look at which tournaments you want to be the one that you have success at. So if you've got like an RTT, that's a great place to get practice in. You get 3 games in. They're probably all going to be against people who are they're showing up to a tournament. They're bringing something that they think is decent. Like those are great practice games. Playing once a week at the local club. Maybe if you're learning a new army, maybe you invite an extra friend over. That week. Maybe on a weekend where you don't have an RTT, you have 2 friends over, you play 2 games, if you're being socially responsible, of course.
Of course.
If
Yeah.
you're learning a new army, you could probably get it done in a month if you're putting the time in to learn the new army a little more than normal. Just have 2 game nights a week for 2 weeks, and maybe you get 8 games, and that's probably enough. 8 games or 9 games before you go to the big tournament. But I wouldn't just buy a new army, rush paint it in a week, and then play 1 game against your buddy on Friday night and the tournament starts Saturday morning. You're setting yourself up for failure, and then you're going to be disappointed in the army. And that's a bad place to be in because you just invested a lot of money in it, probably, unless you already had a fully optimized Primaris Space Marine list lying around. Some of us do. But if so, you've probably already played it. You're probably not switching to it now.
Makes total sense. And I guess that's really what this lesson comes down to, right? Which is setting a realistic expectation based on the amount of time that you play. Chasing the meta is fine. Nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. Like if you want to go build a Salamander's army because you see that they're winning 74% of their games right now, just make sure you get enough practice in before you make a judgment as to whether or not the army is good, right? So, and the other flip side of that coin is if you want to get mastery in an army, there is an advantage to playing a list 100 plus times because you start really getting the nuance and the depth and start making even better decisions, and you can kind of squeeze out. I mean, it's a law of diminishing returns. You don't get as much invested for your time, but it allows you to maybe get a little higher than you would normally. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Now, again, if you're going to a tournament with the expectation of setting up for a future tournament, so like let's say you've got a grand tournament next month and you really want to do well at LVO, but you've got a grand tournament next month. If you're willing to accept like, hey, I'm going to switch to a new army and maybe I won't do much better, next month, but I'll be better in February. As long as you know that expectation for yourself, you'll feel better about your results and you'll learn more, honestly.
Absolutely. Okay, John, thank you so much. I think that's a great tip.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I always enjoy talking to you.
Thanks, guys. For me, sometimes when I want to chase the meta, I try to at least stick within codexes I'm familiar with. Now let's get to the good stuff. Roll that tape.
It's the model of the day, the model of the day, the model of the day.
Today's model of the day is submitted by listener Hotworth from Poland. I love it when submissions come in. This looks like a custom Terminator thick boy. It's a double lightning call, looks to be an absolute blender. This has some of my favorite characteristics of a model. There's some absolute deep reds, really nice contrasting blacks, some freehand flames, realistic looking flames, and again, you can't get past the fact this is a completely unique custom model. Really like the pose, very intimidating, going to strike fear and all the heretical hearts out there. Thanks a lot for submitting this. This is one of the things, some of the best community outreach we have is people submitting the works that they are proud of, and we are proud to showcase it off. If you want your model featured here, please send this to us on Facebook or hit us up on Instagram using the hashtag 40K today. That's how you get noticed by us, and that's how we talk about it on here. And that's it for today. Thank you so much to our content producer, Alex Bainter, our social media director, Tanya Gates, and our technical producer, Seamus Ronan, for all the hard work behind the scenes. My name's Paul Murphy. For John Damaris and Steve Joel, that's what's happening in 40K today. You can catch our best of episode from the week tomorrow on all the podcast aggregators, and don't forget to come hang out with us on the Nova Open Charitable Foundation Twitch stream. We'll see you there.